function. And these are things that people can apply to themselves on a day-to-day basis to improve their focus and well-being now. And then long-term, that translates to a lower risk of dementia.
So, is dementia and is it a genetic thing, or is it a function of atrophy? Is it a combination of those things?
It's a combination of those things. Certainly, there's a genetic component. So maybe I will zoom out to start with and just think about what is dementia. Dementia is the clinical diagnosis of losing so much cognitive function that you're not able to take care of yourself on a day-to-day basis. There are several different types of dementia. The most common is Alzheimer's disease. That's something like 60 to 80% of cases of dementia. The next most common is vascular dementia, something like 10 to 20%. And then there are others like frontotemporal dementia, Lewy body dementia, dementia you get with Parkinson's disease. For those first two, something like 70 to 90% of dementias, they are directly tied to lifestyle and the environment. And right now, it's estimated that somewhere between 45 and maybe even 70 or more % of dementias are preventable. And most of those fall into those two categories. There is a genetic component. So Alzheimer's disease has two broad types. There's early onset Alzheimer's disease. That's caused by a single mutation in a single gene, something like the amyloid precursor protein gene or one of the presenilin genes. Those people get Alzheimer's in their 30s to 50s.
Wait, I don't think I have YouTube.
Predictable and quite rapid decline sometimes.
I only have new pipe.
But that's maybe 1% of Alzheimer's. The vast majority, like when we think about Alzheimer's, we think about age-related dementia. And this is much more related to the environment. So there is a genetic component. You might have heard of ApoE4.
Yeah.
So you can have 3 different flavors of ApoE, apolipoprotein E, 2, 3, and 4. You get 2 copies.
Which is the one that makes you more likely to get CTE?
Oh no, so that's 4 as well. Yeah, so 4 essentially has an effect of amplifying certain inflammatory effects in the brain. That's probably why it makes CTE worse. It makes it more likely for you to get CTE, because if you're getting repetitive impacts, repetitive injuries, then it sort of exacerbates or makes that inflammatory response worse. But when you think about that in terms of Alzheimer's, if you have 1 copy of ApoE4, your risk of Alzheimer's is increased by sort of 2 to 6 times. If you have 2 copies, it's 6 to 20
my
times.
scroll wheel's already doing some dumb shit.
But
it's just
all the data suggests that ApoE4 is a risk multiplier, right? So it's not that if you have a copy of ApoE4, you're definitely going to get
Who's
dementia.
drinking that?
It's that in the setting, particularly of the modern environment, risks of dementia or risk factors for dementia are amplified, like excessive alcohol intake, physical inactivity, low quality diet. So that also means that if you have, if you then address those risk factors, you have greater benefit, right? Because you're offsetting some of that additional risk.
Actually,
So, however you look at dementia from a genetic standpoint, and it can also be family history, right? If you have a family history of dementia, you have an increased risk of dementia. But a lot of what comes with family history is shared environment and shared lifestyle, right? You eat and sleep and move like your parents do. And so if they have a lifestyle that might increase their risk of dementia, you get that as well. So even if you do have an increased genetic risk, you can offset a large part of that through lifestyle and other environmental factors.
So for some people, there's an increased genetic risk, but do some people who do not have this increased genetic risk, do they still have a possibility of getting dementia just from atrophy or just from sedentary lifestyle? No stimulation whatsoever?
Yes, so the kind of the way we would say it is that not everybody who has ApoE4 gets Alzheimer's, and most people who have Alzheimer's do not have ApoE4. So, absolutely.
Okay, wow, what
so
a fucking...
Is it just like everything else? Like your muscles atrophy, your bones weaken when you don't put load on them? Is that what it is?
Yeah, so that's like the core thesis of my book, right? It's called The Stimulated Mind. For that reason, I think that in the... And that's slightly provocative, because in the modern world, we are overstimulated and
nonsense.
Exactly. So we're overstimulated and understimulated at the same time.
Right. We're getting a lot of input, but we're not doing any calculations.
Yeah.
We're not formulating new ideas. We're not being creative. We're not problem solving. We're just
Exactly.
being inundated with nonsense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the function of any tissue in the body, right? You mentioned the muscles, the bones, the liver, the immune system. Their function is dependent on the stimulus you apply to them.
Right.
And so the brain is exactly the same. And if you want functions and networks in the brain to function to perform well, you need to challenge them in order to enhance capacity.
Do you think you need to keep your liver working healthy by drinking every now and then?
Where do you jump?
So, it's
Okay,
the example
there are
of
actually
yes,
two
if you
ways
drink a
here.
lot of alcohol, your liver gets better at metabolizing
Just jump
alcohol.
right there,
So
right?
it kind of it proves the point that doesn't necessarily mean that the alcohol is there to keep your liver healthy. Probably not.
Didn't they used to do that with people that had, if they had lung problems, they would give them cigarettes?
Yeah,
Like people with asthma?
yeah, and
Down here?
that didn't turn out so great. The theory was okay, but
I think they should have just been breathing heavy. That would have been a better application of that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just like, you don't want to your lungs aren't a filter to like torture you. Yeah. So when you started studying this, do you have someone close to you that has Alzheimer's, or is it just a field of study that you're interested in?
yeah, there was two different things. One, I focused initially on
Oh, okay.
the brain early in life, and then your elite level cognitive performance in athletes. And you kind of see that these things sort of tie together. Like what happens early in life, what happens during life, affects what happens later in life.
Mm-hmm.
But I also had my grandfather died of dementia. He was an
So I
alcoholic,
actually have to time this?
and he
Wait.
had a combination of alcoholic, alcohol-induced brain atrophy plus vascular dementia.
I think first
I really wonder about people today, and this is one of the reasons why I was so interested in this, because what we were just talking about before, that people are being oversaturated with nonsense, but not stimulated in any way that challenges you.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a constant state today. And then on top of that, you've got a lot of people that are using
Oh, you just okay.
AI throughout their day to solve all their problems where they don't think at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
There's
problem.
been some studies on that show that it's a decrease in cognitive function. Like when they ask them to actually use their brain, the brain works less well than it did before they started. So you're not getting educated by ChatGPT
No.
or any of these. What you're doing is you're letting it think for you.
Absolutely. So this one, well, maybe one of the studies you're thinking of was a study they did at MIT, and they had students write essays, and they could either just write it using whatever they had in their head already, or using Google, or using an LLM. And what they showed was that as you increase the amount of like outside support you got, Google, and then I think it was ChatGPT, then there was less activity in the brain networks associated with actually doing the task. And students remembered less well afterwards.
One right there too.
So, I mean, this isn't surprising.
Not at all.
You're not using your brain, therefore it doesn't engage in the task. But what's interesting is that they found a version, so like some of the students who had previously written an essay just for themselves, then they asked them to go back and use ChatGPT on top. And what they found was that the final output was better. So the way that we can use these tools, rather than just asking it to do all the stuff for us, which is what most people are doing, and I think will cause skills and maybe even parts of the brain to atrophy because they're not being used, is we use them as orthotics. Like they can expand our capacities, right? You try writing it all first, and then you say,
Oh
hey,
my God, are you
what did I
kidding
miss? What am I not thinking about?
Right.
And you can kind of build on it from there.
And
Oh
that
my
might
God.
perhaps actually stimulate your mind. to
Exactly.
think, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
Like next time I'm writing a paragraph, I'll consider these options.
Yeah, exactly. So you actually have to fully engage your
Why-
brain in
what
that
is this?
process.
Yeah.
But then the end result might be better.
Well, it's just such uncharted territory for us.
Yeah.
Right. All this, especially social media. I mean, completely uncharted territory that people are staring at their hand for 8 hours a day. I mean, that's really what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're staring at your hand and you're hoping, usually unsuccessfully, to get something that really excites you and
Yeah.
something that's really unique and changes your perspective on things. I mean, I think maybe when I was using social media every day, maybe once a day I would get something that I was really interested in that I would save. I'd
Yeah.
go, oh, that's actually interesting.
Wait, what
And I would
happened?
think,
Okay,
okay,
the
that'd be a good
UFO.
subject to bring up on the podcast. But the rest of the time, it was just horseshit.
Well, part of the algorithm, and this, I'm not an expert in training algorithms to do this, but part of the goal of the algorithm is that you don't get everything that is perfect, that immediately captures your attention up front, right? Because you want it to be random. And there's a method in randomness that keeps you scrolling,
Right.
because eventually you'll get those small bumps that then keep you going. But what's particularly interesting about social media is it leverages the fact that we are social beings. So we prioritize information that is called, the acronym is PRIME: prestigious, in-group, moral, and emotional. And this is even greater in social context, right? Because we are trying to learn about our social environment so that we can survive our group and be fitter.
Okay, what is this?
And so social media makes us think that we will get that information, whilst at the same time offering us the exact opposite, which is essentially isolation.
The song is
But it leverages that desire of the human brain to find this social information and this social connection, whilst not giving us any of that.
Also, without it getting any feedback from another human being while you're communicating ideas. So you can say the most horrible shit to people in a comment or a text message, and you don't think about it because it's like there's not a person there, not right in front of you.
That's actually easy.
And it's designed for it's like an anti-human device.
This.
Very weird.
But I mean, if your goal is to capture attention, they're doing a great job of it.
Well, not just that, they're acquiring enormous wealth and also enormous influence.
Put that earlier.
Just all sorts of things. Politics, economics. I mean, some of the richest corporations in the world, they gather a thing that we never thought of was valuable, which is data.
Yeah.
I mean, when people first started using these things, when people first started using the internet, nobody really thought that data was going to be one of the biggest commodities in the world.
Yeah, but now, if they know what captures your attention and what you'll spend money on, and like it's the perfect way to get as much out of it.
Oh my god.
So the concept is future-proofing your brain. Like, what are the things that you think people should be doing to try to future-proof their brain, other than avoiding social media and avoiding a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here?
So I think, right, every tool has a possible use. So like, for instance, social media. If you have crafted a social media that allows you to maintain connections that you wouldn't have otherwise, like the original version of Facebook as it existed 25 years ago was just like posting pictures and you could like chat with some family members, right?
Right.
So if you use social media like that, and there are studies that show that if you're using online tools,
Of course you can
including
use
social
this
media,
box, this
and it increases communication and connection beyond what you would have had otherwise, that can be a net benefit. If it's all you use and it's replacing in-person human connection, then it's a net negative. So there can be ways that it could be beneficial. And if your Instagram feed is just like cute dogs running around in the snow, which is what most of mine is right now, right? That can be a nice 5-minute break in between like productively demanding tasks.
Right.
That's fine. But when you think about future-proofing your brain, this idea that there is some unknowable future, right? We don't know what the future is going to look like. But if we want to exist in that future, we're going to need good processing speed, good decision-making skills, good working memory, good emotional and social skills, right? And so, in order to maintain those, we need to challenge and stimulate them. So, the most important thing most people can do is think about new, challenging, and often creative skills. And there's a lot of evidence for creative arts, music. What they do is they improve the function of networks in the brain that are at risk during the process of aging, particularly because they're important for attention and social connection.
It never is that.
And so if we really invest time in doing these things that we suck at and get better at, but get better at them, we maintain these broad cognitive skills that we're going to need in the future regardless of what happens. And some of that is also personal. So the goal is to build as much cognitive capacity as possible. Right? I have this idea of headroom, which is the difference between what you need on a day-to-day basis versus what you're truly capable of. It's the difference between, like, on a day-to-day basis, your legs need to be strong enough to, like, get you up off the toilet, right? But your maximum capacity is, like, what's your max back squat? The difference between those is your headroom. And then that gives you capacity to perform when you're injured or sick, or you need to, like, lift your car off your buddy because it got flipped in a car accident, like, all those things. Like, when you need to draw on greater resources, you want those resources to be there. Because we are going to be stressed, sleep deprived, sick, and we still want our brains to function. So investing in, like, really challenging tasks and skills builds that capacity so that we have access to it when we need it.
What is the function and, like, what is the effect on the brain when you learn a new skill, like sucking at something, which I always tell people is one of the best things you can do.
100%.
A lot of people don't enjoy it because their ego, they don't like being frustrated that they're terrible at something, but there's something about not being good at something and dedicating yourself to it and seeing market improvement that stimulates all sorts of areas of your mind, which I find really interesting.
So, most people don't realize that the process of learning, which in itself is like the core process of neuroplasticity, right? The brain making new connections and cementing new connections. That whole process is driven by failure, essentially, and making mistakes. Because your brain is a prediction machine. It's constantly predicting what's going to happen next based on the world around you and what you're trying to do. And so, imagine that you're trying to do some kind of new move in jiu-jitsu or something, and you have no idea how to do it. You're going to try it, and there's going to be this big gap between your expectation and reality. That's going to be frustrating, right? That's the feeling of failure. But that's what diverts resources in the brain to say, hey, we need to close the gap between what we hoped would happen and what actually happened. And that's what drives neuroplasticity. And this is also then what drives the cementing and function of these networks in the brain associated with that. So the idea that you start sucking at something and you get better at it over time, that is exactly the thing that the brain needs in order to improve and maintain its function.
How many of those things should you take on at once, though? This is my issue. I have a problem. I wish I could have 4 lives that I could run simultaneously. I would do 4. I'd have 4 different occupations. So I try to smash as many things into a day as possible. But there's many times where I think, boy, I think I'm doing too many different things that I'm trying to get good at.
Yeah.
And maybe it would be better if I just concentrated on one.
So there's a few different ways to look at this. I think that a broad base and a broad range of different skills is probably something that we should all hope to have.
Like talent stacking.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think about, like, one of my favorite books is Range by David Epstein, which talks about the broad range of skills that people who then really succeed in academia or sports have, right? They didn't specialize really early. They have like a broad base of talents that they can then draw upon as they specialize later in life. And I think that's something that we can all aspire to. But equally, what's probably more common is that we try something and we do it for a little while and then we just kind of like give up on it and we try something else. And there's like a little bit of benefit to that. But when you look at some of the studies that really examine the effect of learning some of these creative skills, and they've done it with tango dancers and painters and video gamers. When you compare an expert to an amateur, and where you're seeing the benefits of expertise in terms of the function of some of these networks in the brain, it really is the development of some level of expertise. It is probably required to see the maximum benefit. Obviously, the learning curve is steepest at the beginning, right? Right when you're beginning to learn something, that's when you'll learn the fastest. But there is also some benefit to expertise. So some of that, like, just to say that pick 1 or 2 things that you're actually excited to continue getting better at for a long period of time. And so then maybe you do have to try a bunch of different things until you find the thing that really gets you going. But across all those different skills, they have similar core effects on the brain. So you don't have to do one or both. You can just pick the one that you enjoy the most.
So it's just about the struggle of trying to get better at something, essentially.
A little bit.
Yeah. And my wife is learning a new language right now, and she's been so excited about it. And it's really interesting. She starts talking around the house, in French, and it's one of those things where you like, I'm watching her do it. She wasn't doing it, and then she's been doing it over the last couple of months.
Right at that
And I'm
cheat.
seeing this like excitement in this like new project. And we were talking about it, about how that is one of the things that's very difficult to do, but it's more complex than learning, because it's learning and interactive. It's not just learning. You're learning, but you have to. It requires like this back and forth with another person.
Yeah.
You have to understand sentence structure. You have to. It's just like and especially French is so different than English. There's so much weird shit involved in it. But you could see, like I could see in her that like this is very stimulating to her mind.
Yeah.
And it made me go, oh, maybe I should learn a language. But I'm like, fuck, where do you have the time to learn a language? But then I thought about like when I was on social media all the time, I would look down at my phone some days and it would say screen use today 6 hours. I'm like, fucking 6 hours.
That's what your time is.
Right. If you spent 6 hours just learning Spanish, how you'd be fluent. I'd be able to go to Taqueria and order in Spanish, you know?
Yeah.
It's like we spend so much time doing nonsense that anything that you can do that requires your brain to be in that uncomfortable state of what is this? Oh, it's this. Is that this? Got it. You know, that dance,
Middle of that's definitely good.
that firing of the synapses and forcing your brain to figure this puzzle out. So many people don't have that. And I see it in people that get stagnant, where they're doing the same thing every day. Their job is fairly mundane and kind of boring, and maybe they like it, but there's nothing stimulating about it. They're talking to the same boring-ass people. They don't exercise. They go home, they watch TV, and then they shut off and they do it all again. And then you talk to them like 5-10 years later, and it's almost like they're slipping. Like you see it. You can see it in people that have mundane existences. Like their stimulation is so low that their ability to be stimulated is low.
I think that thing you described is so baked into our society that we started to believe that it's normal.
Right.
So
Yeah,
when you
that's
look at
tough.
the trajectory of cognitive function over like your entire life, imagine like a graph where on the one side you have cognitive function, and it could be something basic like processing speed. How quickly does your brain process information? On the bottom is age, right? It tends to peak sometime around our sort of mid-20s to early 30s. It's usually the peak on average tends to be higher and later the more time we spend in education. So the more time we spend essentially as professional learners, the more we can build that kind of final capacity. After that, it's just sort of like an average decrease downwards. And a colleague of mine, Josh Turknet, and I, he's a neurologist, we wrote a paper a couple of years ago where we theorized that the reason why we see that decline at the population level in cognitive function from about that age is because we go to work, we do the same thing again and again and again, and then everything else in our life gets in the way, and we never spend that same time investing in building our cognitive capacities the way we did when we were kids and when we were in school. And so the decline is partly because we just stopped doing that. So one of the theories of aging is that it's just a continuation of development, like processes of development. And most of the processes of development in the brain are refining connections based on the environment and the stimulus the brain receives. So if you start removing stimuli because you're no longer engaging in these like cognitively challenging things, the brain's going to start removing connections. Hey, I don't need that, right? I'm not using this part of my brain. And as a result, you start to see decline. And so there are studies that show if you have a very stimulating job, it's very complex problem-solving skills, lots of social interactions, you have a slower rate of cognitive decline as an adult and a lower risk of dementia. You see in individuals who continue to engage in reading, writing, lectures, dancing, a whole bunch of hobbies, again you see a slow rate of decline. So some of what we just expect to happen with age is because of the way we stop engaging with the world and we stop challenging ourselves.
Well, it completely makes sense, right? Like, if you think about physical activity, it goes along the same kind of path.
Exactly.
You see, I have friends, I'm 58, which is crazy to say. It sounds so old. But I have friends that are 58 that are basically, they're skeletons with like meat hanging around various parts of it. But my physical ability is very similar to what it was when I was in my 30s. The only way that I could really test it is like physical competition, and I'm not really interested in that. I don't want to get hurt. But my capacity for work is very similar.
Yeah.
And I know that because I force it.
Yeah.
You know, I make myself do it. And I would imagine the same thing is true with the mind. I mean, it has to be. I think it's all together. It's like use it or lose it.
Yeah.
And
Holy shit,
if
that's
your mind
hard.
doesn't
That's
have
ambiguous, kind of hard.
a need to be constantly intrigued and stimulated, like I think
I'm gonna die
for
here.
survival, right?
I'm not saying I'm gonna die here, but if I die here, it's
One of-
expected.
I think about this a lot. Like, what is ADHD? And whether or not it's actually a problem, I think it's a superpower because I'm pretty sure I have it. You know, but yet I'm very functional. I can focus on things. And as long as I tire myself out from activity, I can relax and I can concentrate on things. And I'm very interested in certain things, and I can lock into them and concentrate. But
What the fuck did
if I was forced to be in a classroom with a very boring teacher teaching a subject I'm not that interested in, and I was a child, if I had the wrong parents, luckily I didn't, I would be medicated.
Yeah.
Right? But I think that is this ability to focus on certain things, like hyper-focus, was probably a function of a persistent hunter, right? Because if you wanted to catch an animal, you couldn't be a person that gives up quick. You had to be a person that you keep looking for tracks, you keep trying to find sign, you're trying to figure out a way, like, I've got to keep pushing, 1 more hour, we got 20 minutes of daylight left, I've got to figure this out. Right, you that thing had to be in you in order to be a successful hunter.
So I'm sure that's part of it. The current picture of ADHD I think is quite complicated. So I have family members with ADHD. When they then started on medication, they were like, oh, actually all of a sudden my brain works.
I can't
So,
Right, but that medication is Adderall, right? If I took Adderall, I would say the same fucking thing. I don't need a stimulant.
Yeah.
But if I took a stimulant right now, I'd be like, dude, I'm so much better.
So no, but you know what happens in certain individuals with ADHD when you give them stimulants,
They calm down.
They calm down. Right.
Right.
So I think there's a combination of multiple things. Some is, yes, like these can be very beneficial traits in the right setting, but you also have to consider that we're layering on a modern environment that's like bright lights at night, a whole bunch of caffeine and stimulants, right? And yeah, of course, some of it is, I think, right, the teacher is boring and they're just not engaged because the majority of people with ADHD can still focus, right, on things that they're interested in focusing in.
Yes.
Or on.
Even without any kind of medication.
Yeah, so, but there's like a sliding scale, and I think there's a whole bunch of different reasons why for one individual they might experience symptoms of ADHD or not. So I think it's complicated.
Can I ask you, before you go any further than that,
Yeah.
can I ask you, how much of that is dependent on physical activity? Like, do we study ADHD based on whether someone is physically active or not? Because, look, if I'm not physically active, I'm a mess. Like, if something happened and for some reason, like, I got a court order, you're not allowed to exercise for 6 months or you go to jail. Like, oh, God. I'd probably be a fucking complete basket case, right?
Yeah.
And maybe I would have full-on ADHD. Maybe I wouldn't be able to concentrate on anything. My brain would be bouncing all over the place. Like, how much of it is a biological requirement that your body has to release energy?
So I think I would expand that out even further than that, because physical activity is a core requirement of our biology and physiology.
Right.
There's a nice quote by Inigo Milan, who's a well-known exercise physiologist, who says that physical activity is baked into our evolutionary development, so much so that now we've had to invent exercise in order to to prevent what happens when we don't move.
Yeah.
So the lack of movement is a disease-causing, pro-aging situation.
So to stop you there, what if, or do they, when they treat kids with ADHD, do they take that into consideration?
So, I'm not an ADHD researcher, so I genuinely don't know.
But I would think that before you would give someone a stimulant, maybe track and field. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe play badminton. Do something where you've got to run around.
Yeah.
Or you like, oh boy, I can focus now.
I think that's again, I would say that's needed for all kids, regardless of any potential diagnosis. So of course, I think that should be taken into consideration. Whether that's going to be enough for every kid, hard to say. But we know that all humans require significant amounts of physical activity just for their biology to work properly.
Right.
So certainly if that's not being taken into account, or it's not available,
Yeah,
or it's
I'm
not
just scared
encouraged,
that I might
there are a
die
whole
there.
host of conditions where that's going to be a problem.
Well, it just only makes sense, right? And this has been talked about forever. The Stoics used to talk about it, quieting the mind. The samurais used to talk about it, like physical activity. But, one of the main benefits the Chinese used to come from thousands of years ago, quieting the mind. And the propensity that we have in the society, this direction of almost immediately prescribing a medication for something, when it seems like what you're doing is you're dulling a biological requirement. You're dulling the impact of this biological requirement that you're not needing. Why wouldn't we prescribe exercise first and then think about those things? Like, for instance, like hormone replacement. If you have a good doctor, an ethical doctor that is working with someone and they find out you have low testosterone, one of the first things they do is adjust your diet. They say, well, you have so much food in your diet that causes inflammation. You have a very high rate of complex carbohydrates. You have a lot of sugar in your diet. You drink too much alcohol. You smoke cigarettes. Let's remove those things first, and then let's see what happens. And then you increase your protein, and you start drinking water, and you go, oh look, your hormone levels are going up naturally. Well, because you're fucking poisoning yourself, right? So wouldn't you? Why don't they prescribe exercise for kids? Other than the fact that you can't make money off of it, wouldn't it be a good idea?
So I think that all kids should absolutely get several hours, ideally, of movement and physical activity of different kinds every day. Part of the problem, it's not that scientists or doctors don't think that's important. Right now, the systems that we have make it very difficult for those things to be put in place, right? So making sure that every kid has the time and the resources to be able to exercise, and like the right kind of people so that they know what they're doing and they're supervised. And it's the same with say with testosterone replacement. You've got to think of testosterone. Right, the primary cause, or one of the most common causes of low testosterone in men, is that combination of metabolic disease, being sedentary, poor quality diet.
Like dumbass.
Creating the systems that allow people to change those things, and then supporting them to do that, is really hard. Nobody has solved the behavior change problem, right? If we think about the modern environment, and we think about what that drives us to do and not do, but we have all this information, right? We know how to prevent these diseases. We know how to reverse many of them, and a lot of it is driven by lifestyle and the environment. But supporting people to change those behaviors and make sure they have the resources and time to do it, that's really hard. Like, nobody solved that problem yet.
That seems like a problem that's easy to solve. It's just based on personal responsibility.
No, but it's not.
But if you could tell someone, this is your requirement for the day. I want you to run 1 mile. I want you to do 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups and write it down.
But so first of all,
but you're saying it like it's impossible.
I'm not saying it's
very difficult.
I'm not saying it's impossible. I think that those of us for whom this has become a part of our personality and our life, like you and me. Of course, it's of course you just do that. Like, you just go for the run. You do the 100 push-ups.
Right.
But for people who like have never had anything like this, and it's never been a part of their environment, it's never been a part of who they are, changing that actually requires a ton of work and coaching, and it's actually really difficult. When I say
It's difficult, but it's totally doable physically. It's not like I'm asking you to breathe underwater.
Yeah.
Like, people have done it, and you can draw inspiration from, like, my friend Jelly Roll. Like, you know Jelly Roll, the musician?
yeah.
Jelly Roll was 500 pounds, and he's lost 300 pounds. And he did it with no Ozempic, no GLP-1s. He just started walking and started cutting sugar out of his diet, and slowly but surely, not even slowly, over the course of just a couple of years, he shrunk to like a normal-sized human. Fucking amazing. But he drew inspiration from a lot of other people. You know, one of them he's good friends with my good friend Cam Haynes, who's an ultramarathon runner and endurance athlete, and so he's taken him up on this, worked out with him, and helped him, and just watching YouTube videos, and just all he started doing was just walking. You know, where he couldn't walk up hills, and he would just walk around his block and walk up the hill when he didn't want to do it, and he did it. It's like you can do it. You just have to start doing it. And I think the starting doing it is the most difficult. I don't think it's difficult to do it once you gather momentum, because there's a thing that happens with people when they start doing something. They get excited, and then they look forward to doing it again. As long as you don't take a guy who's 500 pounds and say, today we're going to do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, we're going to do kettlebells, and then we're going to do laps around the block. You can't do it. It's not possible.
Yeah.
But you could just go for a walk. And then tomorrow we're going to go for a walk a little bit further. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to double that walk. And then in 3 weeks, we're going to incorporate some light body weight squats. And along the way, we're going to adjust your diet. And then write these things down. Like, it's not impossible.
So
it's just they need motivation.
So I agree, it's not impossible. But I've worked with several digital health companies who are working in the behavior change space, and people don't need more information. Like, they know that they need to walk more, and they know that they could eat better, and they know that they could sleep better.
Right.
But the process of trying to, first of all, understand, like, how should I do that? What should I do that? When should I do that?
No,
and then,
time for the
right,
tool.
but some people may absolutely not have the time or the environment. Maybe they live somewhere where
maybe not.
actually, they don't want to be walking around outside, right?
Right.
That's relatively common. Or they don't have a kitchen, right? So then, how do you cook food? Like, how do you navigate that?
Not
that
only
food?
there.
So I agree. I completely agree with you. All of this is doable. It's just that different people are going to need different levels of support to do that initially, right? Gain that momentum,
Right.
understand how that feels, how it changes them. And right now, the majority of people don't have access to that kind of support. And I absolutely hope that changes, right? The food environment changes so that it's much easier to change the way that you eat.
Can't hold
And
there.
the built environment changes so that it's much easier to go
Can't
out
hold them.
and have
You know,
a-
just don't. Just
and
keep
do a lot of
timing
that.
everything, bro.
So
Don't
I
hold.
think
That's
we just
it.
have to consider that it's both, right? There's an individual component, right? But there's also like a societal component where we have to make this as easy for people as possible and sort of like build it into their lives such as they are.
Okay, so let's consider the societal aspect of it. Let's consider how would you implement something, like let's imagine that you get appointed to some committee that's in charge of trying to facilitate this growth and improvement in people. What would you do?
So I think you need a few different parts to it. One great part would be to say through, if you could dramatically improve quality and access of like education at all levels and make physical activity just be a regular part of that. That has been slowly removed from many educational curriculums around the world over time, right? So bring some of that back and it just becomes part of day-to-day life. And then you would also teach people the skills involved in some of these other things. So like teach people how to cook and how to do that within the bounds of what they have access to, their cultural preferences, dietary preferences, financial abilities, that kind of stuff.
Right, that should be a part of the school curriculum.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like you should teach kids about taxes and all these other things.
Right.
And so I think if you start early on and you do this with sort of curiosity and skill building, then you release people out into the I think that's the place to start, because when you get out into the real world and you're working 3 jobs and you live somewhere where you don't want to go for a walk outside and like you can barely get 6 hours of sleep every night and you've got 3 kids to look after, saying, oh hey, you should do 100 push-ups every day, like that's just not going to happen. Like, other things are going to happen that are more important. So I think there's that part, maybe the skill building part. Then it's thinking about like how people have opportunities to do those things. And then I would think about access to high quality healthcare, psychological care, like these things that sometimes people need help that they can't get access to, or it's expensive or whatever. So I think giving more of that so that they get support when they need it would definitely help as well.
I think one great way would be to devise a website, maybe like a government website, where you put in like your body weight, when was your last physical activity, what this, that, the other thing, what's your diet, and then they implement a program. And you could follow online with a bunch of other people that are doing the same thing and post your results.
Yeah.
So you have a community aspect to it. You have a dedicated program that you can follow, so you don't have to think about, oh, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do this. Like, it'll just tell you, just do this.
Hold on.
Just do this.
I'm having
Okay,
diarrhea
400
again.
pounds, you're
Oh,
39 years old, you haven't worked out in 10 years. Okay, here's day 1.
Yeah.
And follow along, post your weight, what you're eating. And with AI, that's one of the good things about an LLM, right? With AI, you could ask it to formulate adjustments.
Yeah.
And you could say, okay, what nutrients should I be consuming? How much protein do I actually need? How many calories do I need? How many calories are in this and that? And how much protein do I get from 20 ounces of broccoli or whatever the fuck it is? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So when you look at some of the most successful trials of behavior change, and most of them are based around weight loss studies, right? That's a very typical way to do it. When you want somebody to change their behavior and feel good about it, one of the sort of constructs is self-determination theory. You've probably heard of, right? Humans need 3 things: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So autonomy is I am in charge of my life and I'm in charge of my decisions. So what are the things that I want to work on today? Well, I have some choice there. Competence, how do I help somebody feel like they know what they're doing? Like a lot of the hurdles with exercise or diet is I don't know what I'm doing. And this guy says that I need to do sprints, and this guy says I need to lift weights, and this guy says I need to do X amounts of zone 2. But what does that even mean? Do I even know what I'm supposed to do? So how do you build competence in people? And then relatedness, that's the point that you were making, right? You have a group, you support each other. Maybe you do stuff together. So one of the most successful weight loss trials of all time was called the Broad Study. And one of the things they did, so they lost a lot of weight and they kept it off. And so most weight loss studies, people regain it afterwards. Is they met several times a week. They did potlucks, group activities, they helped each other.
Yeah, community.
Yeah, community. The one downside of that is that there was an app, I can't remember the name of it, that tried to build that for exercise. So you'd have these buddies and they'd be your accountability buddies. But what happened was that when people started to slip, they left the platform much faster because they were I don't want my buddies to know that I'm not doing what they are supposed to be helping me do. So you kind of have to build in multiple buffers and different ways to help people depending on what it is that motivates them or not.
We have public education, right? We have universities, we have public high schools and middle schools. Why don't we have public gyms? How much money would it cost to have community gyms set up where you don't have to have money to join, where it's paid for by your taxes? You're not talking about something that's outside of financially it wouldn't be feasible.
Yeah.
It's not that hard to do.
So I think that was I don't know what the financial model is now, but that was the idea of like the YMCA.
Right.
Yeah. So like
yeah.
it becomes a community focus point. Like my wife grew up in North Carolina. So like she talks about how they were down the YMCA all the time, like playing basketball.
I used to have a YMCA when I lived in Boston that I used to go to. It was really cheap. They had weights, they had a track, they had a swimming pool, they had all sorts of stuff. It was way cheaper than a regular gym, and they had classes you could take.
Yeah, and there was something very similar close to where I grew up in the UK. Just like for a couple of pounds, you go do some kind of martial arts class or something.
Yeah, they had that too. Does Austin even have a YMCA? Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, there's like a big one downtown. I've driven past it once, like big glass front, I don't know what it costs.
How much does it cost to get into the YMCA in Austin? Let's find that out. I mean, that should be paid for by taxes.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, if we pay for all this other shit that we don't need, why don't
When a big hurdle is accessibility and
1 year, new progress pack, join today. How much? $125 value for a year? Is that what it says? How much does it cost?
Doesn't say how much it costs.
What does it cost? Join today. How much?
So the secret of most membership stuff for gyms, they don't list their prices.
Yeah, but it's a YMCA. Click on join now. Join today.
You come in and say hi so they can talk to you.
Oh, is that what it is?
Every year. It's probably cheaper than this.
Well, why don't you put it into Perplexity or something like that? Say, how much does it cost to join a YMCA? There we go. Let's guess. How much do you think it costs? $20 a month? 50?
Yeah, I think it can't be much more than Planet Fitness, right? Or else,
Planet Fitness is pretty cheap, but the thing about Planet Fitness is they a lot of these big gyms, not just singling out Planet Fitness, they kind of hope that you don't show up.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
You're generally looking at $40 to $80 per month, depending on age and household type. That's not too bad.
Yeah, but for some people, that's a lot of money, right? That's
$40 a month.
Yeah, that's a good chunk of their food bill. So there should be some sliding scale where this becomes very, very heavily subsidized.
Yeah. Or free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, ideally,
I mean, why wouldn't it be free?
Yeah, I think it should be.
And then homeless people go in there and shower.
There are.
Well, I mean, I'm okay with that too.
Depends on who they are.
I mean, if they shower.
I'm okay with some of them. Fucking crazy people shitting in the sub in the shower. Blue Cross Blue Shield, many health insurance plans offer gym membership through reimbursements, discounts, or programs like Active Fit or Global Fit. Benefits can include $20 to $400 annual reimbursements.
So some people can use their health insurance to get some of that fee covered.
Okay, well that's nice. But the thing is, again, it's just like Planet Fitness or any of these places. The thing is, like, they want to recruit you, and then you go, and you're like, okay, and then you never go again. Yeah.
But we genuinely want people to go. Like that's the whole idea.
Well, the thing is, like, there's one thing, like, for someone, and I've taken friends to gyms before that don't work out, and they're like, what do I do? They have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
Classes.
Yeah.
Classes is what should be.
Absolutely.
Classes.
Like, learn a new skill, move, make a friend. Like, so much amazing stuff happens.
Yeah, and they should have multiple different classes available at the same time, right? There should be a class for people that have done nothing. Like, okay, these are dumbbells.
Yeah.
This is, you pick up a light one, I'm going to show you how to do a shoulder press. And then it should be for, more advanced people, intermediate people, something.
And a whole range of different skills: yoga, Zumba, Pilates, Tai Chi.
Slightly different, not dumbbell weights, but in Austin they have a bunch of public, free gym equipment in different parks.
Playgrounds and parks, that stuff's great. Well, New York City has a whole, look at these guys. Look, staring at each other, talking shit.
I think one of the problems is that, well, first of all, like, a lot of people might just like look at that and be like, what do I do with that? And then the second is that a lot of what we see around fitness and movement is kind of the extremes, right? They're idolized. Professional athletes, like, this is what the best of the best do. And we internalize this idea that that's what we need to do. And if we're not doing that, then we're not doing anything.
Right.
Whereas all the data suggests that literally any type of movement above what you're doing right now is beneficial. Cardiovascular health, cognitive health, dementia risk. So I think some of it is just like letting people know and having people understand that it doesn't take that much to move the needle, And then when they start to do a little bit, right, you get a bit of a bug, maybe you enjoy it, you find the thing that you enjoy, you do more of it. And so that's part of it too, like having people understand that it doesn't take that much to really start, having an impact.
Yeah, and it's also, for a lot of people, this is a society that really emphasizes quick fixes on things. And it's not a quick thing. You have to trust in a process. And so that has to sort of be, people have to be educated to that. It has to be taught to you, like, this is a process. And you're on a process, you should be very excited about being on this process. It's going to be weird because it's going to take a long time for you to see any results. But that long time, like in that time period, you will eventually see results, and then you'll be excited, you'll feel better, you'll have more energy, it'll help every aspect of your life. You just got to do it.
One of the things that I like when I talk about movement in particular, or exercise, and say cognitive function, is that you will start to see benefits relatively quickly. So if you go and do a 6-second max sprint a couple of times, right, and there are studies that show this, you will acutely, like immediately see an improvement in cognitive function. Better blood flow to the brain, you've created arousal, which is really important for focus and attention. If you go for a walk outside, right, you will sleep better that night, so you'll feel better the next day. And so, yes, you're absolutely right that this is a lifelong thing, right? You can't just do it for a couple of months and then hope that it's going to translate to benefits for decades to come. But you can see immediate benefits if you start to do some of this stuff, and you can feel it very quickly. So I think that's going to be important, because not everybody is going to feel in the position to invest in their future selves. Right. So if you start to see benefits straight away, you're more likely to keep going.
Okay, so that's for people. I'm glad we covered it, but we're essentially talking about people that don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. For people who do know what to do, you said you work with a lot of Formula One athletes.
Yeah.
And what do you do for, Formula One's fascinating to me. I've been to the COTA racetrack. We're actually putting up a studio. We're going to have a studio at COTA. We're going to have a second studio at the racetrack. Yeah. And the idea is to take people around the racetrack. I think it would stimulate their mind, and then come in and do a podcast. It'd be a lot of fun. Yeah. You'd be racing. Your mind would be like, woo. That is an incredible sport where it's fractions of a second, split-second decisions. Your ability to react has to be incredibly fast. Have you ever seen the thing where they drop things?
Oh yeah,
Lewis Hamilton is better at anybody than anybody else. He's just fucking intense. What do you do with them? So you already have people that are prime, right? They're the best in the world. Yeah. But they are constantly looking for an additional edge. What are you doing for them?
Yeah, so there's a few things there. My work with Formula One drivers happens mainly through a company called Hinsa Performance. It was founded by Hinsa, Hintsa, named after Aki Hinsa, who was a Finnish orthopedic surgeon. He worked with Heidi Gebrselassie, with Mika Hakkinen, who was a 2-time Formula One world champion. And then now, sort of a big sports enterprise, and I'm the head scientist for motorsport. So that's all motorsport categories, from karting and kids up to Formula One. We work with several Formula One drivers. And we provide coaching and medical services. Each driver, or most of the drivers, have a coach, right? So when you watch Formula One, there's somebody holding the umbrella, holding the helmet, right? That's usually, that's often one of our coaches. They're usually a strength and conditioning specialist, or they might be a physio or a nutritionist. They have a ton of really high level skills, and they're there every day, right? They do the sleep, they do the training, they're traveling with them the whole time. They sort of can manage as much of their life as possible. And when you're thinking about that level of skill, the stimulus part has taken care of itself, right? One of the reasons why these guys are so good is because it's all they've done. It's every day for 2+ decades, 4 decades if you're Lewis Hamilton, or close to that. So, and that's slowly building these skills, first in karting, then in these different Formula categories, Formula 3, Formula 2, up into Formula 1. And so, the kinds of things that we might work on, and so like I'm helping coaches, working with the drivers, we have a huge team, doctor who works with a bunch of Olympic athletes as well. And so it's a combination of, are there any individual performance limiters? So we might do some blood tests, look at nutrient status and various other things. Make sure they're really on top of that with their diets. But then, in that kind of world, and like, I'm sure you experienced this yourself, everybody's got a thing for you to try, or a thing for you to do, right? Like, you're constantly being bombarded with the latest, greatest technology, and like, this guy wants to sell you this thing. So, a lot of what we do is, like, be really careful about the things that get added, and maybe even take
What if I
like,
actually tried it?
like, what are we trying to work on? What are we trying to build? What does this one driver need? Because they're all very different. They need a different, they have different diets. They have different training programs. They have different warm-up strategies for when they get in the car. And so a lot of what we end up doing is focusing on the other side, right? So if you stimulate your brain, it adapts when you rest and recover afterwards. So because they're essentially jet lagged 9 months of the year, right? They're in a different country every week. That's a huge factor. And like on top of like every race weekend, they've got to go to sponsors, they've got to do media days, right? They're constantly moving. So it's what can we do to maintain their level of performance throughout the season? This is something the coaches do a ton of work in. Like what kind of exercise and how can we do targeted training to like maintain performance throughout the year? And then the other part is how can we get as much recovery as possible? Because if we want them to adapt to all the work they're doing and come back each weekend at the top of their game as close as possible, we need to get them to rest and recover and come back and do it again. So often we're not focusing on the stimulus part. We might be in driver training, we might be thinking about how can we develop cognitive skills and this kind of thing, these driver physical skills. In Formula 1, often it's how can we get these guys to recover better? How can we get these guys to sleep better? And that might be technology, but it might also be, just like how can we nail the basics again and again and again, make sure they're getting enough time in bed, right? Especially when we're traveling a bunch, that gets really difficult. So we're often focused on the recovery side and how we track, like how do we collect those data? How do we know when something's starting to slip and get on top of it early? That's the kind of stuff we tend to focus on.
So let's talk about the jet lag aspect. What are the strategies for mitigating jet lag? And like, how do you, like, let's say if they fly in for a race, like if they're going from Europe to the United States and they have to race, how many days in advance do they arrive, and how do they shift their circadian rhythm and eliminate jet lag? What are the strategies?
Yeah, there's the time for them, like the number of days they come before the race will depend on how long it was since the last race, plus what other things they've got going on. But it's often like 2 or 3 days, right? They'll try and come in the beginning of the week, at least like Monday, Tuesday, if the race is then going to be on Sunday. And then, as much as possible, you might start to try and shift things earlier. So shift your light exposure so that it aligns more closely with your destination a couple of days before you travel. Shift your sleep if you can. Shift exercise and caffeine time, again, because those things shift circadian rhythm so you can kind of get closer to what you're going to do when you land. And so those are probably the primary tools is exercise, light, caffeine, use some of them use melatonin. You can also change when you eat. So like food timing is a Zygaber, it's a fancy word for like time giver, like helps to drive circadian rhythm. So often when you're flying, they'll give you a meal that's happening like in the middle of the night in the time that you're going to land, right? So often you might try and avoid eating while flying and then have your next meal in time with like a normal meal timing when you land.
I've heard that one of the things to help jet lag is eliminate meals when you're flying, period. If there's something thing about eating, even if it doesn't have anything to do with the time. Like, say if you're flying from Los Angeles to New York, one way to eliminate jet lag, they say, is just to not eat on the flight. So 6-hour flight, don't eat at all.
Usually, I think most of that is to do with circadian timing, because you're usually flying at a time when you wouldn't normally eat, or like you're often like they give you dinner at like 9 p.m. or it's even midnight, right? So if you see,
but is that all it is? Because what Waze explained to me is that just there's something about your body processing food when you're flying that actually exacerbates jet lag.
so I can't think of a, other than the fact that I mean you're obviously sat still for long periods of time, which might not normally happen at that time of day as well. I think the majority of it, but certainly in terms of jet lag plans, is thinking about the timing of meals relative to circadian rhythm, because you normally break for fast at a certain time of day, you have dinner at a certain time of day. So I think most of it is related to circadian time.
Okay. What about rigorous exercise? Because one of my strategies, like say if I have to fly to London or something like that, and I want to avoid jet lag, I immediately go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing I do. I put my stuff in the hotel room, I go right down to the gym.
Yeah.
No negotiation whatsoever, and I get in at least an hour.
Yeah.
I have to.
That's a great way. That's a great way to help offset some of the jet lag, because you start to tell your body, oh hey, like even though it's whatever midnight in Austin, right? This is the time that I want to be awake. So it starts to advance the circadian phase. So exercise. Some people like to do cold exposure. Right? It does a similar thing, right? Increases adrenaline, increases heart rate, increases arousal. Can do it with light, can do it with caffeine, and so like some combination of those things can.
Okay, so there's the sleep, adjusting the sleep, there's the light exposure, there's exercise and food. Is there anything else? Like what kind of supplementation is effective to mitigate that?
Yeah, so they might use melatonin. One of the issues that we have, it's not an issue, it makes perfect sense, is that the supplements that we use with the drivers have to be third-party tested, right?
Yeah.
So some of the things that we might like to try.
Is that because the drivers get tested?
Because the drivers get tested.
And what do they ban? What's banned?
Everything. It's the same as it's like all the WADA drugs.
Okay.
It's the same. They're under WADA regulations. So,
are they allowed to use peptides?
It's a grey area in general. I don't believe anybody does, and we certainly don't recommend it for that reason, because we just don't know what's in it.
Are they tested for peptides?
So they're not tested for peptides, but it depends on whether there's actually a peptide that has good high quality evidence in humans.
Well, there's also you should get them from a real good compounding price. Make sure you're getting them from a quality source, which is the real problem with peptides today, is that since they're not regulated, there's a lot of gray market. There's a lot of real, bullshit corporations that are selling you stuff that's nonsense, and even things that are tainted.
So yeah, so the main thing that you're worried about is contamination. Like, what else have they put in there? Right. To make it to get better.
Same thing as supplements.
Yeah, same thing as supplements. But in reality, like there aren't many peptides where I would say, well, actually I couldn't think of any where I'm like, this will have a definite benefit based on high quality studies of humans. Right? Those studies just don't exist. And so until we get to that point, plus the sort of like the grey area of it, the sort of legality, we tend to focus on the real. I mean, it's the basics, but we know that they work.
But there are peptides that have shown to increase sleep and increase REM sleep.
In humans.
Yeah,
like which ones?
How should I tell you? They talked about it, but I never tried it. I know Tom Segura is on it. See if you can find what it is, Jamie. It's boy. Is that what it is? No.
I want to see the randomized controlled trial. I have to. I couldn't recommend it unless I know that it's third-party tested, it's legal, and there's a high-quality trial. Like all those things have to align.
The problem with high-quality studies is they take time and money.
Yeah.
And these aren't FDA approved, so you're not going to get those things. But it doesn't mean they don't work. And this is the problem: is that like you can try it, with the way drug-free sport works, which is the governing body of the UFC drug testing, they don't allow anything, unfortunately. But there are studies that show that BPC 157 it increases tissue recovery, it helps you heal.
Not in humans.
True, but look, the same thing with the COVID vaccine. They weren't testing in humans either before they started trying.
There was for the first wave of COVID-19 vaccines, there were some pretty good quality trials in humans.
Right, but all it showed is that it showed an antibody. It didn't show that.
No, against hospitalizations and death. In the first wave.
We can argue about that because it's very sketchy.
Okay.
It's very sketchy data that has been disproven.
I think that those first waves were high quality.
But
I
they
don't
didn't
think we've
even
seen it.
say that it increased hospitalization and death. It was stopping transmission and infection, which was just a lie. So that's what they claim. So it's all sketchy because it was based on profit. The whole thing is weird. It's a weird one.
I can't talk about
Maybe it's not a good example.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of anecdotal evidence, especially with professional athletes, BPC 157 and TB 500 in particular, for tissue injuries, for recovering quicker from tissue injuries.
So I know there's anecdote. I know that people say it benefits them. In the environments that I operate in, that's not enough.
I understand. You're an actual doctor. Dr. Tommy Wood, he's legit. I'm just a dork. I'm allowed to just say, try it, fuck it. But so with drug-free sport, like with the UFC, they use thorn supplements. Is what the UFC recommends. Very good, very tested. So you have to find whether it's pure encapsulations or some legitimate, well-proven, established company that provides you with your third-party tested supplements. What supplements have been shown? Let's stick with Formula 1 drivers. Reaction time is critical. Your ability to function at a very high cognitive state, right? Yeah. You're thinking constantly. You're always calculating movements. Yeah. What supplements are these guys taking that benefit them?
So when you think about complex skill performance, and there's like a whole chapter on this in the book, the most important driver is arousal, right? How aroused is your physiology? And are you set up with the right level of sympathetic activation, noradrenaline, adrenaline, cortisol to kind of get the best level of performance? And
don't let any one of those overwhelm the other ones.
Yeah, exactly. So the curve is bell-shaped, right? It's the Bjerke's-Dodson curve for a couple of guys who actually did studies in mice, that then translated actually surprisingly well over to humans. And so what it says is that if you're sort of under-aroused, you're kind of disengaged, a bit lethargic, right? You're not really going to perform well. If you're over-aroused, you're sweaty, anxious, right? Again, you're not going to be able to sort of pay attention to the task. So there's this sweet spot. At the top of the curve, you're capable of flow states, clutch states, which is where you can perform your best, but it's still like, it's hard work. And so what you're trying to do is get the guys to the top of that.
That's what I'm trying to do.
And this, for many, involves some element of routine, right? Knowing that I've done the thing that I know that's going to make me feel good. And so it's a combination often of the things that we've already mentioned. They might use some warm-up sprints, they might use music, they might use bright light, they might use breath work, they might use cold. Certainly if it's going to be a hot race, they might do some pre-cooling to bring down core temperature. That improves endurance.
Do they bring like cold plunges to Formula 1 days?
Yeah. So some of them have a cold plunge, or you can fill a wheelie bin with water and ice and jump in that. It doesn't need to be that cold actually. So for increasing endurance performance, like 20 minutes at around 20 degrees Celsius or like 60-ish Fahrenheit, that significantly improves like endurance.
Is there a benefit to 20 minutes at 60 degrees Fahrenheit versus 3 minutes at 34 degrees?
So the problem is that when you get too cold, you can actually decrease cognitive performance. So there's a fine line when it's really cold, that what you want to do is you want to decrease core temperature without negatively affecting cognitive function, and so that's
okay,
easier
how
to
about
manage
the-
at slightly less cold temperatures.
I see.
Because just like if you did really exhaustive exercise, right, you go out. And so I was a rower in college, so like a 2K test on a rowing machine. Like after that, my brain doesn't work for like
Right.
hours after rowing. So like very, very cold ice baths for several minutes. For some people, that can decrease cognitive function. So you can find a sweet
Wait,
spot.
why sometimes
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense because my mind is very bad after brutal workouts.
Yeah.
Like if I have a really hard workout and I come in and do a podcast, there's a moment where like it's just not firing.
Yeah, and that's perfect, and that's normal. We know that if you do very fatiguing exercise for a period of time, you experience declining
But
cognitive.
a light exercise stimulates.
Exactly. So like one of the best studied exercise modalities to improve cognitive function is literally just like a 20-minute jog. Right? It's
Just a light jog.
Exactly, but you're sort of warming everything up, increasing sympathetic activation, increasing release of all those hormones you mentioned, and that increases arousal, that increases cognitive performance. So they might be doing some of those things. In the car, right, there'll be differing types of caffeine use, depending on sensitivity and timing.
Are they taking it in pill form so that they can regulate it quickly or accurately?
Yeah, so some do, sometimes pills, sometimes gels, some guys just like cappuccino, some might use like green tea because like the theanine in there might balance some of like the jitters that you can get with caffeine. Some people find creatine stimulating or mildly stimulating, so they might take creatine before they get in the car.
Well, there's been studies on creatine and cognitive performance that are really interesting.
Particularly in the setting of sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
And so when they're jet lagged, I think that would make sense. There are some newer caffeine-related compounds that if we can get them when they're third-party tested, some may try those. So theacrine or T-crine and paraxanthine, which is a metabolite of caffeine. They may have some fewer of the like anxiety promoting high blood pressure, high heart rate effects, but maintain some of the cognitive effects, especially in combination with caffeine. So you have a little bit less caffeine plus a bit of those. They're harder to get, sort of third party tested and stuff, some of the evidence is newer. But that's looking sort of promising as another thing that people
Don't do that.
You mentioned theanine, which is a nootropic. There's quite a few different ones that people enjoy. Choline, there's a bunch of different ones. Like, do Formula One drivers, do they supplement with that kind of thing?
So you're thinking like alpha GPC, like
Yes.
So like it's a choline type of choline.
Yeah.
It's like preferentially turned to acetylcholine, and acetylcholine is really important for like focus and attention. Some of that stuff isn't regularly used, like mainly because it's hard to get a third-party tested source.
Is it really?
Yeah, but like most of the things that you take, there probably isn't, or that anybody would take. There might not be an NSF for sport certified version. There's very few companies that do that routinely for all their supplements.
God, you'd think that would be really accessible.
Yeah.
Because nootropics are so common now.
So there's that. Plus, there's the when we're working with different drivers, they each have very unique needs. So it's a combination of what do I think is really going to move the needle, and not overcorrect. I think most coaches I've spoken to in Formula One have a story where their driver had 3 espressos before it got in the car, and then he overcooked the first corner. Right. So it's a really tricky balance of trying to make sure that they can systematically get in the zone to perform well in the car without sort of pushing them too far over the other side. And so that's where supplements become trickier, because it's very easy to down-regulate if you've overcooked it through some of those physiological means. Right? I can do some breath work or something to kind of calm myself down. But if I've like stuffed myself full of caffeine, it's going to be hard to like come back from that and then you sort of step in the car and cause some issues. So we tend to focus on some of the physiological stuff and then maybe a little bit of supplementation, because that seems to be the sort of like best balance across those different needs.
Well, it seems like Formula One would be a great place to develop a framework for this because there's so much money involved. It's such a massive sport, and you would think that they would have that dialed in. Like, you were 168 pounds.
And you can still
This
see
is
that
when you
though.
woke up. This is what you need right now. You need this much protein, this much this. Stop eating X amount of hours before the race.
So, yes, we do a lot of that, but it's different for each guy, and nobody wants to share what they've got.
Oh, that
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of
So
deal.
like even like your biggest rival is your teammate in many respects, right? Because that's the only guy you can go up against truly head to head because you're in the same car.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of what we do, we have to silo within the driver. Like, this is the stuff that works for this guy, and I can't use that to help this guy. Right? That's one reason. That's one reason why
They don't share information.
yeah, and that's one reason why Pincer has been very successful as a company, is because we're very good at walling this stuff off. Like, we know what's good for this guy, we know what's good for this guy, and we sort of leave those separate because, right, different frameworks, different approaches might be.
Well, it's such an extreme example because any little deviation that you wouldn't normally feel in everyday life could be disastrous
Yeah,
in a Formula One race.
yeah, yeah.
What about different things to stimulate cognitive function, like playing chess or doing? Is there anything that those guys engage in
It's Joe Rogan
specifically
into
to improve the way they think?
Again, it depends a little from driver to driver. A lot of them like play some kind of video game, which actually have some interesting evidence to support them in terms of improving cognitive function. I think for them though, a lot of that is it's almost like relaxation. Like, when you drive a Formula One car for a living, like, playing a video game isn't necessarily as challenging, right? And so a lot of it tends to be very car focused, right? They get tons of time in the simulator. Like, during the season, they get a lot of time in the car. So there's nothing that like consistently would work or that everybody does.
Woo!
I think a lot of where the cognitive training side comes from is during driver development, right? How can we get more sport specific or supporting cognitive challenges in younger drivers as they're developing? So we might use some cognitive training tools and some other things to try and support some of those development processes, because by the time they're at the top, especially if you want to maintain it, the main thing that you need to do is obviously maintain those driving skills, which you'll get through like the day-to-day aspects of the job. Plus then it's really continually paying attention to sustain physical health, physical performance, especially because of the like arduous schedules and all that kind of stuff. So often again they're focusing on the other areas because they know that will help them stay at a high level for longer.
So they're focused on recovery from all the unavoidable aspects that are going to mitigate performance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So sleep, some of them use different meditation or breath work or other devices just to kind of help maybe like gamify it slightly, make it a slightly more enjoyable experience. It's easier to switch off if you're doing things related to sort of like vibration and that kind of stuff.
You mean like pressure plates, like those standing on?
Yeah,
things?
so like
shaky plates?
no, there's
Turbosonic.
there's a chair that some guys use, and I mean this is used in a ton of different sports and like in our military, it's called a shift wave. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah. So some of the guys have a shift wave. It just kind of depends on what works well for them in terms of like allowing them to downregulate, allowing them to kind of sleep better. And again, we sort of often focus on the more sort of physiological, environmental side rather than trying to throw a bunch of supplements at them.
Well, it seems like that's a great place to study Formula One drivers because you're dealing with these like fine lines, this tiny differential between success and failure.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things is that the sort of the real performance stuff is kind of siloed within the team. So then, right, because that's related to performance in the car, and that's sensitive information. So a lot of the time we're kind of thinking about, and this actually across most sports, the best
shit,
predictor
that is actually
for performance is subjective well-being. How does the athlete feel? How and so like there are tons of
it's
studies
not.
even like coming out
You see
now.
a
Like
little
you
bit
compare that
of
to blood tests and HRV and all this other kind of stuff. How they feel. Am I tired? Am I achy? Do I feel alert? All that kind of stuff. That seems to predict performance really well. So how can we, and better better than some of those other things? The best is a combination as much as possible. But so we do a lot of work aggregating data. But then really the rest of the time is how can I make sure this guy feels good every day, right? And feels confident when he gets in the car. And so then we have psychologists, they're a big part of that, plus like keeping an eye on their body and all that, all those sort of things, to sort of put them in the best spot possible.
Do you coach them to avoid toxic relationships?
I'm not sure if anybody's ever gotten into that.
For fighters,
Yeah.
it is like one of the number one predictors of poor success in a competition. I've seen it over and over again. Guys with horrible relationships.
Yeah.
Whoever's fault it is, both parties, whatever it is. But those are the ones, like when they have like really bad relationships. Like there was this one guy that I know that was a really high performer, very good fighter, but he had this crazy girlfriend, and she required so much attention that it would drive her nuts when he was getting ready for a fight, because he was spending all his time concentrating on the fight, and it would peak literally the night before the fight. Like their relationship was so toxic, she would always start fights, and all the coaches knew it. She would start fights after he weighed in, because he was so locked in on the fight the next day that he wasn't paying attention to her.
Yeah.
So she would storm out of the hotel room and go down to the bar by herself, and he would freak out, and he would always want to pull in Portland.
At least I personally haven't seen the evidence of that in that world. I will say that
Fighters are kind of crazy though. It's an interesting group to study because it's a very bizarre activity
Yeah.
to begin with.
Yeah.
It's, the way I describe it is high level problem solving with dire physical consequences.
yeah.
And
Although you could say that Formula One is similar in that respect, right?
very similar.
There are certainly a lot of drivers come into the sport with often driven by family relationships. So I think that may be an influence sometimes. Right?
Overbearing parents are another one. Coaches, overbearing
Yeah. So
father
they come in with this long history of like what got them there. So maybe that affects some of them.
What are the most challenging athletes? I assume you've dealt with a bunch of different athletes from various sports. What are the most challenging ones to deal with?
I think the ones that I found most challenging are, it's usually because they're pulled in so many different directions that it becomes difficult for them to like really engage in the things that we know is going to help them perform long term. And so and like I have friends who work in the NBA, for instance, where I think this is amplified even more, right? You have teenage millionaires who can literally do whatever they want, right? But you have to like keep them on task, and we see that in a lot of professional sports. And so it's that kind of stuff. Is what's distracting them? What are the other things that they're doing that's stopping them from being able to engage in these processes? And so you can have like really good conversations and put together really good plans, and like in the moment they're really engaged and they're interested in what they want to do well, like it's their job, and they love it. But when other things start to come into play outside of that conversation, they don't engage with things, they don't do it, they don't see the results they want, they get demotivated. But it's usually because like other things in their life, right? Could be like a toxic relationship, so there tends to be other distractors that kind of pull them away from that sort of like
Unfortunately, success is a big one, right? Because the motivation to succeed in the first place is you want financial gain, you want recognition, you want all these things that you're chasing after, and then once you get them, now what?
Yeah. And some people like maintain like really they maintain dedication to the craft. Like this is the thing that I love and I want to do it every day. And like, the longer you do it, the more you have to take care of like the little details. Like early on in your career, you can train however you want, eat however you want. If you have a certain set of skills and training up to that point, you'll do pretty well. But you want to sustain that for a very long period of time. It requires an increasing amount of dedication to the other areas of your life to make sure that you can still do that. And I think sometimes people just aren't honest with themselves in terms of what they really want to do or what they can spend their time doing. So that's the most frustrating thing, is when you sort of you hear one thing but you see another thing because of like the other areas of life that are taking over.
So what do you do if you have an athlete, like say an NBA athlete, and you see all this talent, all this potential, but then you notice that they're getting pulled in all these different directions? Maybe they just like spending money all the time and partying and hanging out with girls. How do you get them back on track?
So I don't do a ton of work in NBA. When I intersect with that, I'm generally advising on like the data portion rather than like interacting with the human. So I don't have good tips, but luckily because I've never had to deal with that, so I imagine it's quite frustrating.
So what athletes do you deal with? Like what sports?
So Formula One is the one where I primarily am like face to face with athletes. In other professional sports, I'm like an advisor to the team that works with them on like a data, health, nutrition.
Oh, okay. Got it. And when you compare notes, what are the differences between like dealing with Formula One athletes versus dealing with like NFL or NBA or baseball?
A lot of the stuff comes down to differences in travel schedule and training, and the ability to capture data. For instance, so data capture in Formula One is really hard because of the types of travel, and right, you don't get to aggregate across a team, whereas when you're part of a big team, there's several people you can kind of work, but you work with and aggregate data across to kind of understand what's happening with individuals as well as like overall. But I think that Formula One is unique because it's so individual in terms of each driver has their one specific team, and it's often very difficult to capture some of the data that we might want to capture, like getting blood tests on guys who are in a plane every other day, right? Really difficult. Whereas other places where they have a home base and this kind of stuff is usual, you might be able to get at that better. So I think that's maybe one of the biggest differences is the travel schedule and how easy or not it is to like capture.
How many times
when you're working with these Formula One athletes, like how much are you changing the methods that you use like year to year?
It will depend on whether. So I mean, my job is to stay on top of the latest research, right? So what's come out recently that we think will meaningfully move the needle? In reality, I think this is the case in the majority of professional sports that I've interacted with.
So people are actually tuning.
The main thing is getting.
I mean, just one singular person, and I'm not even.
And like
paying
again and again and again, like we know that's foundational to sustain performance. And yeah, like some of the tools and technology for recovery and some of the supplements, especially if you're trying to address nutrient insufficiencies based on an inadequate diet, which is also very common. Right, those things do make a difference. But the main struggle, at least from the guys that I regularly see, is having an environment and framework that allows them to keep doing that stuff, like stay on top of a specific training program, or stay consistent with a certain sleep routine that allows them to sleep well. Those are the things that make the biggest difference, and so it's like that's where we tend to focus. And then maybe every year or so, we're constantly improving our data capture and our data analysis. We're constantly trying to improve sort of the support processes, because we know that with the better support, we can make sure they're more likely to do stuff that's going to make a big difference. And then maybe every sort of like year or two, there's a new thing that comes in, and we're like, oh yeah, we're fairly confident this is low risk, high potential benefit. It's not going to take a ton of their time, right? That's another thing. Is when I first walked into the paddock it was here in Austin. It was the first time I saw Formula One, so I started working with these guys. I showed up and I'm like, I've got like 100 things that these guys are gonna love. It's gonna be really important. It's gonna revolutionize everything. And then you speak to like a coach for the first time. They're like, we've got time for maybe one thing, and you better be really confident that this thing is gonna make a difference, right? Or else you wasted our time.
So how do you decide?
So a little bit of it is, of course, there's going to be some trial and error, and it does depend on.
But the errors, like consequences, are huge.
Yeah, like and you just have to acknowledge that up front. And the error is biggest when you're telling some guy to do something before he gets in the car, right? Because that's going to immediately have an effect. So there are ways to offset some of that, right? They have practice periods, and so it's like right now, it's a new generation of cars for this season. Nobody's driven them before. They're getting more extended track time to practice with them. So like that might be a time when you could try a new supplement or something before you get in the car, because it's a much lower risk setting. You're not racing. There's not 90 other guys, or now 21 other guys trying to get past you. And then right, so some of it is that, right? Trial and error. You acknowledge that you just have to be really confident that you know what problem you're trying to solve, and that it's an important problem, right?
You know,
So I've worked with coaches and their driver where like reaction time was a very specific thing. Like off the line, we think we need X amount improvement. So then it's a combination of practice, maybe tinkering with some supplements, maybe tinkering with some of that around stuff we talked about earlier. So you need to make sure it's an important problem. Then you need to think about like what's the hierarchy of things that have the highest likelihood of benefit and the lowest risk, and then sort of work your way through it. And I realize that this is all kind of in the abstract because it just like really depends on the problem that's in front of you.
What about the psychology aspect of it? And this is a very controversial aspect of mixed martial arts in particular, because there's
Damn it!
kind of
Now
two
I'm
schools of
like
thought.
self-aware.
There's like I have a good friend.
I mean, it's
who's
my
a
fault
coach
for
that
putting this
recently
stream
told
on
me
public.
he's not working with any fighters anymore that need a mental coach. And I said, why? And he's like, you just can't count on them. He goes, they're just too fragile. You need a mental coach because I want a motherfucker who just knows that this is what he's supposed to be doing. Just go out and do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, boy, that kind of limits your athletes, right? Like, do you think that there's benefit in mental coaching, or do you think like to reach a championship level, there's an inherent mindset that you must have going into that, and you can improve upon that, but if you do not have that mindset, you're not going to be successful. This is my friend's idea. I don't want to call him out because I know the athletes he works with.
Yeah.
But you know, he recently had a bad result with one of his athletes. He's like, I'm done. No more guys who need mental coaches. I want killers.
So I think that you're going to need some element of a mindset to get to that level to begin with, right? But we have psychologists on our team who work with the drivers regularly. Other drivers who aren't, who work with us, bring in sports psychologists very regularly.
Do you collaborate with these psychologists? Do you talk to them? Get their notes?
Yeah. So we have.
What are common issues?
Come on.
Again, it's just it's so dependent on the individual, but it's also very common across all athletes, right? So it's like overcoming failure or fear of failure, or you maybe it's dealing with difficult relationships, which for various reasons that they can experience.
Damn it! Now I'm self-aware.
Then it's how their inherent thought processes when that happens. So we know that the most resilient athletes are those that tend to be self-compassionate, right? So like,
interesting.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I would have thought the opposite.
Yeah, and so there's this idea, right? That you want killers, you want
people hard on themselves.
The guys who are hard on themselves. But for sustained, and so this is looking across, like as broad as possible across the board. Those who are most successful most often, of course, there's gonna be the killer who's just like hard on himself and gets the job done, of course, right? But these elements of self-compassion that include things like mindfulness, like thinking about the world and understanding it and about their place in it, and common humanity, which is like treating themselves as they would treat other people, and acknowledging like we all make mistakes and stuff always happens, but I can overcome this. You know what, this has happened to me before. Like I've sucked, I've crashed, I've done something wrong, and hey, I overcame it, and now I'm succeeding again. Those mental skills are most common amongst
I'm
the
distracted.
high level athletes. So I give an example. This is not, so I don't know, but like Roger Federer has a very famous quote, right? He gave some like graduation address or something, where he says that across his career, he only won 54% of his points on court. So that means that 46% of points he lost, right? So that means that every time he makes a mistake, every unforced error, he has to come back and be like, hey, like you've got this. I know I can do this, and that's
This is
point
the
he's
worst
making
level
in
to be
Instagram.
distracted on.
And it's those kinds of mental skills that seem to be most important. So when you've had a history of beating yourself up and being hard on yourself, and that's kind of gotten you to that point, there will often be a stage where there's so much accumulated pressure or stress or failure that just working harder and being hard on yourself isn't going to be possible. But athletes who are successful for a long period of time tend to have those other abilities. So like, think about the bigger picture, understand what they've overcome previously, treat themselves more like they would treat others, and they seem to be the ones who overcome failure and then continue to succeed.
I'm really into professional pool. I play pool and I follow a lot of professional pool players, and there's a trait amongst the elite pool players that's pretty consistent for the ones that are successful and win tournaments, is the ability to let a bad shot go.
Exactly.
Because the guys who beat themselves up over bad shots, you see it. They slump in their chair, they start running their fingers through their hair, they throw their head back, they take a deep breath, and then they're carrying that with them when they go out to make a shot again.
Yeah.
And for a high-level pool player, so there's performance scores. And a really high TPA performance score is like, I think the best in the world right now is Joshua Filler, who's this guy from Germany, and he's arguably, if not the best, one of the top 2 or 3 guys in the world. His performance score is about, I think it's like 850 out of 1,000. So that means if he makes 1,000 shots, he's going to make 850 of those shots, which is very elite.
Yeah.
So you got to think like even the best, because they're playing on 4-inch pockets, but this guy never gets upset.
Yeah.
When he misses, he just sits down and he's got a dead look on his face. The Chinese Taipei players are the best at it. I don't know how they coach them over there. So they're some of the best in the world, the Chinese Taipei players. So these guys from Taiwan, they have no expression. When they miss a shot, they just go and sit down.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll smile, but they never get upset. Whereas a lot of the American players, they get fucking pissed off. You see it, some of the European players do the same thing. And those guys, they fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
Their performance is elite. They'll make a couple of bad shots, and then the match goes downhill, and they wind up getting steamrolled.
Yeah. And I think you can, there's other stuff going on. You can think about it in terms of that, like arousal curve we talked about earlier, right? As you get stressed and like worked up about a missed shot, you're pushing yourself further and further away from the level of arousal that's required for performance.
Yes.
Right? And
dwelling on failure.
Right, and then you're thinking about what happened previously rather than the shot that comes next.
Well, that's one of the most important things about a shot, because even if your mechanics are good, if you think you're going to miss, you're going to miss.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing, because you know what to do, you know how to do it, but if you think, fuck, I can't miss this shot, you're going to miss.
Yeah.
Like 9 times out of 10, it's very weird. So it's a very mentally, the game, a giant percentage of it, once the skills are acquired, because most of them, when they get to an elite level, have all the skills.
Yeah.
It's a mental thing. It's ability to perform under pressure.
Yeah.
Because it's fine motor skills. It's,
There's, I mean, across every different aspect of cognitive performance, well-being, there's, again and again you see that psychology drives physiology and drives performance. Like you can measure these things as you think them, as they then change physiology, which then alters how you perform. So So I mean this is a very, very long answer to your question of like
Can we have one
psychology and
singular
important? Absolutely, because I think that's going to be foundational to whether you can even achieve those high levels of performance. And everybody needs help occasionally, and right, that's perfectly normal. I mean, right, different people are going to need different tools and different skill sets. So like, different psychologists are going to provide different things to do. So like, yes, that's always something that we have on hand as needed as part of the team, if that's going to be.
Yeah, the mind controls so much of what you do in life, even if you have skills. And that's something that the elite performers either figure out or don't, right? They either never achieve their true potential because they keep tripping over themselves, or they go, okay, this is not helping me, it's only hurting me, I keep allowing myself to spiral into this same sort of mental state, and I have to find a method. And so, like, when you talk with psychologists, what tools and what sort of strategies do they give these athletes to abandon negative thinking?
There were a few different ways to approach it. Again, like, don't want to pretend I'm a psychologist, right? These are we have other people with these skills for a reason. But I think a lot of what becomes important, again, is thinking about the causes of maybe initially the causes of mistakes, and then the causes of stress, and why that may or may not be beneficial in the way that you can leverage it. So there's a lot of research on like understanding that stress responses are there to divert resources to something that matters and something that either requires your attention or adaptation to it, right? So understanding that actually stress in the moment, in that kind of moment, is a good thing, and you want to leverage it rather than be scared. So, and we know that people who are trained in this mindset, so this is work by Arya Kram at Stanford, the stress is enhancing mindset. Also, like, predicts how well Navy SEALs do during training, like how much this will appreciate it. Stress response is important. This is me rising to the occasion. Not only that you still get stressed, where you still can measure stress hormones. That still happens. You release other things that help to also like counteract that and drive adaptation, and the results in better decision making when stressed. So like reframing some of these responses can be important, as well as then thinking about like after a mistake happened, thinking about other examples of times when you did that and you overcame it, or having like these different parts of understanding what it is to be a human, even when you're performing at an elite level. Maybe some of it is building in routines so that you feel confident in a given situation, right? Like, these are the things that I do, and when I do these things, I know I'm going to perform well. That can be a double-edged sword for some people, because, and I think we see this a lot of this in the world of sort of like health optimization. We assume that we need to do all these things in order to perform well, and so then if those things don't happen, we think we won't perform well, right? So that's another way for us to get in our own way. So you kind of have to balance that depending on the individual. And then some of it can be right in the moment, right? So you're one of those pool players, and you're getting increasingly frustrated because you're not making your shots. It's almost impossible to think your way out of that, right? Your brain is too busy being dumped in adrenaline to like make good decisions. So that's where you might have tools like leveraging your physiology, breath work, closing your eyes, visualization. Those things sort of work from the bottom up to kind of help your mind get a grip and like get back in the game. So it's a whole bunch of different things depending on what you might need. Is it, I need to regulate myself at the moment? Is it, how do I set myself up for success through a series of, and it could be like, what's my warm-up? What am I thinking through? What am I visualizing before I perform? Or is it tools to kind of deal with the processes of failure afterwards?
And I would also think that even just the knowledge that these high stress situations where you do encounter failure can produce a result inside the mind that can be beneficial if harnessed.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so one of the ways that this is taught to other people, right, not just athletes, is like think about all the people who performed under significant stress, right? This is what the human mind and human body is capable of. If only we allow it to do that.
Right. That's what's important, right? It's like I think inspiration is one of the most powerful fuels that we can use, and inspiration from other people's examples is one of the best versions of that.
Yeah.
Because I think there was a young kid who recently broke the world record of the mile. Did you see that?
Oh
David?
yeah, I watched
I
that.
think- is
It
he
was 16, it
16?
was 340 something, 348. Maybe.
Yeah, 348,
Yeah.
which is nuts. We didn't think that people can get below 4 minutes before.
Yeah.
This 16-year-old kid
Yeah.
hits 348. And I immediately thought, wow, through the inspiration of this kid being able to do this, who's going to break 340 now? You know?
I heard from somebody that in the run up to the race, he was like, he hadn't raced a bunch. Recently, he this was just going to be like going to be a run out. He was just like going to loosen his legs up, get back into the race. And so like in that situation, he's put no pressure on himself, right? All the brakes are off, like whatever. He's got nothing to lose. And so like in that situation, that you could like incredible performances are possible.
And it's crazy because that's only the 11th fastest indoor mile. That's what
Yeah.
it says here. I thought it was the fastest ever, but it's the
No, it's
fastest
the-
ever
it
for
was-
under 18.
Yeah, under 18 record, yeah.
So crazy. That's so fast to run a mile. Ooh.
I mean, I'm not sure I could go that fast, full stop, ever, like, for any period of time.
Yeah, for like 20 feet. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of amazing, but I mean, this is one of the things we talk about all the time with mixed martial arts athletes in particular, is that today is such an amazing time for them because there's so much access to video. So you can watch all these performances by all these elite athletes, and then it raises your personal standards because you're mirroring what these people are capable of doing, and in your head you have a very high standard because you've seen it, and that inspires people to become better. And so the athletes that we're seeing today, I say all the time that martial arts has evolved more in the last 30 years than it has in the last 30,000 years. And it's true. And it's true just based on my own personal experience of seeing athletes from 1997 when I first started working with the UFC to 2026. It's a completely different standard. They're so much better. They're so much more elite. They have so much more balance. They have so much more balance in terms of their game is balanced. Striking, grappling, wrestling, all of it together. It's amazing because they're walking on the foundation that was set by the athletes before them. So it's the mind recognizing what's possible.
Absolutely, or not thinking that something is impossible.
You see how it's about to stand like this?
It's the opposite too. Maybe that's more of it, right? It's the same with Roger Bannister performing a mile, right? As soon as he did it, not everybody, but lots of people started to do it.
Well, and also the ignorance of youth, which is why young athletes are so damn good sometimes.
Yeah, because they don't worry about their own limitations.
And they also don't have mortgages. They don't have wives. They don't have kids. They don't have bills.
So, but this is also the thing, is right. If you think about these traits that we'd maybe like to carry over that help us perform or maintain performance for long periods of time later in life, like some of that curiosity, not worrying about like these burdens, continuing to engage in these things and challenge ourselves. The kids just like readily do, right? The brain is exploring and trying to learn. I think we need more of that as adults. But when you think about the standard being set, or thinking that things aren't impossible, there's two parts of that. One, yes, that's a huge aspect of achieving higher and higher levels of better performance. But for many of us, like us regular people, when you spend a lot of time seeing other people performing so much better than you, it can have the opposite effect, right? I think this is something that we see on social media. There's some really interesting interesting studies on social rank, right? So we are always trying to see where we rank in the world compared to others, right? It's a part of us like being social beings. And so if you spend all day looking at people who are richer, more beautiful, more jacked than you are. Internally, you demote yourself, right? You give yourself a lower social rank, and that creates a social stress that triggers genuine stress responses, like increased sympathetic activation of some like inflammatory processes in the body, very similar to if you were socially isolated. So for some people who have are on a trajectory to improve their performance, because they're really athletes and they see these other guys doing it, like, oh yeah, I can do that, right? That's really beneficial. But in like the general world, the rest of us, when we spend so much time seeing other people do other things better than us, it can almost have the opposite.
But not with everybody.
No. It's
the
very
thing. That's the thing between the difference between an athlete and someone who's intimidated by other people's performances. Well, instead of being inspired.
Yeah, but that's what I mean, is that when you're when you're an athlete and you're seeing other guys like you do this thing, right, that's like, okay, that creates a bar you want to try and hit. But that same thing is very different out for the rest of us, based on like seeing how we compare to others.
Well, particularly in things you can't control, like your looks or your wealth.
Yeah, but
wealth in some ways can be achieved, but
your mind doesn't interpret it that way, right? You don't immediately rationally think, well, I can never be that, right? I'm never gonna look like Brad Pitt, right?
Right.
You can't apply that sort of like rational thinking to it.
Well, then even worse for young girls, because a lot of them are getting surgery because they know that some girls have radically improved their looks through surgery, so they think like, this is the solution to everything. I just need to get a nose job and a chin job and a this and a that.
Which of course never.
No, and also it's like the psychological aspect of being controlled by paying attention to other people's lives is very weird, and it's, Jonathan Haidt wrote a great book about it called The Coddling of the American Mind, about the impact of social media, and particularly on young girls. It's really bad.
Coddling them. So he did write Coddling of the American Mind. That was more about changes in like academia and helicopter parenting and safetyism. The anxious generation was the one about.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And that aspect of it, of comparing yourself to other girls, is particularly devastating. It's like you see when the impact of social media, when social media gets introduced into the world, immediately you see more self-harm, suicidal ideation, all these different things increasing. Whereas so those same stressors, if you were in a position like an athlete, and you're a competitive athlete, and you see someone who's elite, you would be inspired, but you feel helpless to achieve these goals that, you can't get any taller, you can't get any better looking, you can't, this is what you got, and then you see these, and then you see people that are using filters, so it's not even what they really look like.
Yeah, so I think that's why there's this, it's interesting that very similar exposures, depending on who you are and what you're trying to achieve and what you have the ability to achieve, can have dramatically different effects on mental and other well-being.
Right, but you would imagine that for competitive athletes, you've already developed a certain amount of resilience already. You already have a competitive spirit, and you are working towards a thing as a high level of achievement is something you're already doing. So seeing a Michael Jordan, seeing a LeBron James, if you're a basketball player, you would be inspired. And instead of being like, oh, I'm not as good as that guy, like, fuck, I want to be as good as that guy. What do I have to do? Well, Kobe Bryant worked out every day and he did this and he did that, so I'm going to do that.
So that's the key difference, right? Is that something else we didn't talk about this in terms of like the approaches of the most successful athletes, is that they don't just say, I want to be like LeBron or Kobe. They say, what did he do? What can I do? So they focus on the process, right?
Yeah.
You have to love and focus on the process, because you can't guarantee a certain outcome, right? So like, and I talk about this in the book, and I give the example of the 2012 Olympics, right? The guys who came second, third, and fourth ran personal best times. Like several other national records were set during the whole 100-meter sprint competition, all the different rounds. But like, Usain Bolt ran, right? And so like you can like no you can be the best you've ever been and be amazing. Like you can run fast enough to have won a gold medal any other year, but like sometimes you're out of luck because Usain Bolt shows up.
Yeah.
So like you've got to focus on the process because you can't guarantee the outcome. But by focusing on the process, right, you're gonna get much closer.
Yeah, that's interesting, because if you are a person trying to be the best in the world and you happen to be in the same weight class as Mike Tyson,
It's gonna be tough.
what are you gonna do? Yeah, but I mean, that's always been the case. That's the thing in championship level fighting. You find that when someone is a real outlier, that what happens is all the other people in that weight class tend to achieve a very high level,
Yeah.
even if they never wind up being as good as Anderson Silva or whoever it is. It winds
I'm
up
not
being a
focused.
very
This
competitive.
is like limbo. I need to
contender class.
focus.
Yeah.
Underneath it, and much more competitive than divisions that are not being
Focus.
dominated by elite fighters.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a very large book, right? So I know it can't just be the stuff that we've already covered. What other
Okay,
things
just-
do you think are in here that are important when you're talking about future-proofing your mind?
I will say you're looking
I just
at
need to
dummy
focus,
copies, so
okay.
we'll paste
Yeah,
it.
you just tricked me. Look at this, folks. I was saying this is a really large book. This is a fucking empty book.
So
That's crazy.
the different.
I read this, I'm like, maybe it's a trick.
Yeah, you're just not paying attention. The book is as thick as the real one will be.
I believe you.
So and that's on purpose.
I've never been given a dummy copy of a book before. So does it even have writing? No writing. Good. I'm gonna use this as my new joke book. Notes.
Well, once the full thing is printed, we'll send you a real one.
Okay.
Um,
You did trick me though. They kind of didn't try to read it.
So the first part of the book is about some of the history of neuroscience and why we think about the brain the way we do and some of the limitations that's created, like why we think about Alzheimer's disease as just being like the accumulation of amyloid and tau proteins in the brain, which people might have heard of, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's been boiled down to, when there's actually a much bigger picture of many other things that are important.
Was it Alzheimer's where the amyloid plaque, where that idea was sort of proven to be a little bit bullshit?
So there have been not really, but kind of. So there were several seminal papers in
That were hoaxed, right?
that were manipulated in some way, right? And this unfortunately is quite common, where you change the figures, you manipulate these blocks to make them show different things, and you kind of move them around and copy and paste. It kind of shows what you want to show, and so.
Alright, just chill. Because this level, I need to focus. So. And also, I'm ruining my brain by doing that. Okay, oh my god, my attention span is ruined. I'm focusing on. Honestly, what is wrong with me? think my attention span is ruined.
Take a break. Oh my. Oh my god, dude. Holy shit. My attention span is ruined. I keep multitasking. I keep doing multiple things at once, and now my brain cannot decide what to focus on. I'm fucked. I'm fucking fucked. Holy shit. 2020. Okay, take an actual break, dumbass. Trying to fucking actual break. Stop trying to. I'm fucked up. My life is fucked. I think this will be my last level before I eventually calm the fuck down. Because I'm stupid. Okay.
need a break. I just needed a break. I'm washed. No, I think it's because my attention span has become way too fucked up. It's way too fried. My brain right now, it's like a mushed piece of shit. Holy shit. Geometry Josh 2. Now it's Jekko, but the publisher is Geometry Josh. You know what? How about we just do it like this? Huh? I think this is way better. Because I have a showcase. Like every single radio level I have a showcase.